It's hard to go to Montauk and not notice all of the windmills on the way.
There are 3 windmills that we know about that are tied to Camp Hero. The windmill house of Camp Hero will be the main focus of this video. Windmill number 1. Another windmill tied to Camp Hero is the windmill that was moved to Peter Beard's property, directly bordering Camp Hero. It was moved there from the Sandpiper Hill House, a mansion in Ditch Plains, Montauk, which was on a large hill at the edge of the bluffs.
That's Ditch Plains Beach. That's Ditch Plains Beach right there.
When the windmill was in Ditch Plains, there were 2 anti-aircraft gun batteries very close by with 37mm guns apiece, and other locations at Camp Hero, such as the current parking lot, which used to be the location of the massive hotel, the Wine Danny Inn. There were a line of 150 anti-aircraft artillery portable guns on towable wooden platforms. But over near the Sandpiper Hill House in Ditch Plains, the guns were most likely in protective shelters similar to this model. But Camp Hero was not done with this windmill yet. It was purchased by Peter Beard, the famous wildlife photographer known for his African safari shots, and next-door neighbor to Camp Hero. The windmill was moved to his property, and it was then named Thunderbolt Ranch. Many famous people visited his home, including the Rolling Stones, Andy Warhol, etc., until 1977, when there were a major fire at the ranch, which destroyed windmill number 2. Strange enough, there is a rectangular hatch in the ground with rung ladders leading to an underground space on his side of the property. It used to be a building of unknown origin at the corner of Camp Hero and that location that seems to be a guard booth, when they took down the small building, revealing what seems to be some kind of escape tunnel. Peter Beard, being a wildlife photographer, filled the pit with snakes and named it the Snake Pit. After the fire in 1977, the hatch in the ground was very apparent. In this image from a random blog online, you can see it was still able to be opened at that point, but it is unknown what happened to the snakes. This was at the far west side of the property, suggesting that a small personal tunnel may have ran the entire length of the base along the bluffs. Windmill number 2. Yet another windmill, which was not actually a windmill at all, but a bunker that was part of Camp Hero Coast Artillery System. Inside, you would find the standard reinforced cement walls, rung ladders, and cement hatches. The FC station, also known as Fire Control Station, was used for trigonometry and used to calculate the shots from the large 16-inch guns of Battery 112 and 113, housed in the bunkers we all think of when we think of Camp Hero. The faux windmill was at the highest point of Whale Hill on Gardiner's Island and was one of the 18 FC stations that were built to support Camp Hero while camouflaged to fit in with the local environment. Windmill number 3.
According to the Arcadia book Images of America, Montauk, page 71, we learn that Congressman Lathrop Brown, 1883 to 1959, bought the windmill that had been functioning as the Wainscott Library from 1912 to 1922 and moved it to his property on the cliffs near Montauk Point. And then, right here...
Want to go this? What's this way, B? I will. Look at that. What's that? Look at that rock thing. In this field investigation at Camp Hero, we found the corner wall of the windmill house. What the hell is this? Just be careful. I'll check you for ticks after the fact. We might have found another cannon. Exactly. We might have found another Revolutionary War structure of what, 1812 too?
What was I just telling you a second ago? Did you get that?
You were talking about FDR and how they were wondering if the windmill was used. Are you going to go up? You sure it's not one of those things that hold it on top? Because the cannons back in the day were crude. They made it out of just sticking stuff together and cementing it, and lo and behold,
Windmill House on Montauk Point was the summer home of U.S. Congressman Lathrop Brown, who had been FDR's roommate at Harvard. His house was built near the bluffs not far from Turtle Cove and was named for the windmill Mr. Brown had moved onto the property. Built in Southampton in 1813, it was moved to Wainscott in 1852, and Mr. Brown brought it to Montauk in 1922 to serve as a guest house. This stood on the cliffs of Montauk until 1942 when the Army removed it to build Battery 216, which is pretty much on top of the same location. When the property was taken over by the Army in 1942 to create Camp Hero, the windmill was returned to Wainscott, where it came from. And before that, it was from Southampton Village, built in 1812. So this thing's ancient. It's from a very old part of Southampton. It was moved to Wainscott, turned into the library. Then they moved it to Lathrop Brown's property in Montauk on the Cliffs. I mean, he bought it and moved it there. Turned it into a summer home where he would hang out with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, one of his best friends, Harvard roommate. And when FDR was going through some healing time, he would come out and spend time at Lathrop Brown's windmill. Now, the thing about this is, what kind of plots and plans and schemes, especially on a military level, were made, being, the people who they were and their military positions and influence in Congress. And what's under Battery 216, which is right next door? That is the question. Is it something secretive, like ammo storage that was built in World War II? Because we know they used it for ammo storage. But what is underneath there that I witnessed as a kid? That hole. What's 4 stories down? What kind of structure is under there? It could be older. It could be dating back to days of cannons. It also could be something else built previous to World War II, possibly hatched as a plan between Lathrop Brown and FDR. So we continue. If you wonder why I'm so interested in the mystery of Battery 216, you can check out this video which contains the details and my best description of what I saw inside the tunnels of Battery 216 as a kid. And although it's narrated by a friend, it is my personal experience in the form of a field report of the very first time I explored Camp Hero.
What? No way.
Let's look a little deeper at the facts and clues and try to figure out what lies beneath Battery 216, the former site of the Windmill House of Montauk Point. In 1919, the Montauk Naval Air Station closed, but naval radio and communication stations were popping up all around Montauk. The Navy was expanding rapidly, and that had a great deal to do with Lathrop Brown. Lathrop Brown was not only a senator, but also the Secretary of the Interior of the Navy. In 1921, Lathrop Brown's good friend Franklin Delano Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio. By 1922, Lathrop moved the windmill to Montauk and built the attached guest house. In those years following, FDR was partially paralyzed and would visit his friend at the point to take leisure time and rest and relaxation to aid in his recovery. So what did these very powerful men talk about? Let's look at what was going on around them. At this point in time, the Montauk property on the bluffs bordered the shoreline, which was under the jurisdiction of the Navy, and in 1925 became part of the joint Army-Navy harbor defenses of Long Island Sound. At the same time, alcohol prohibition was in full swing. In fact, the massive hotel directly across the street was the largest bootlegging basement on Long Island and the main point for incoming booze, which made its way directly to New York City's underground speakeasies. Nearby, in town, Carl Fisher began building Montauk into his vision of a resort city, the Miami Beach of the North, building several of the infamous buildings that still stand in Montauk today. In 1927, Carl Fisher finished the Montauk Manor and the Carl Fisher Tower. There is major speculation that the Carl Fisher Tower leads directly to the Montauk Manor's underground catacombs via underground steam tunnels. It is further speculated that this tunnel ran under the very roads that Carl Fisher built, and then all the way to Montauk Point. The man did build the first east-west highway across America, so it's not like it was beyond his capabilities. To top it all off, these tunnels were supposedly being used for bootlegging purposes, and they were later utilized by the Army when they took over the property in World War II. All rumors aside, and back to the windmill, where the very two powerful men must have had several conversations, or at least a few of interest. I can't help but wonder if they took notice of the bootlegging hotel, rumors of underground tunnels built by the richest men in town, and people digging out cases of booze from the nearby bluffs of Turtle Cove. Did the actions around them inspire them in any way? The pieces were all in place. In 1928, FDR became governor of New York and then proceeded to become President of the United States during the Great Depression. That same year, Carl Fisher began to sell many of his holdings in Miami Beach to dump the money into Montauk. And the following year, the stock market crash of 1929 put a black cloud over his dreams of making Montauk a resort. The next 3 years saw the Great Depression put an end to his dreams for good. In 1929, Montauk Point became an active location in the harbor defenses of the North Atlantic, as a larger extension of the nearby Navy seaplane base, as well as the underwater minefields run by the Army, where there were joint live-fire exercises with submarines, seaplanes, blimps, mines, radio, and more. You may ask, why is this so significant that these men were at this location? FDR was first elected in 1933. Ironically, the same year they began planning and submitted to Congress a proposal to build the first twin 16-inch gun emplacements at Camp Hero, as we know today as Battery 113, although it would not be built for 9 more years. Later in 1933, Prohibition was ended, and by 1934, Carl Fisher was broke. Meanwhile, FDR had become one of the most powerful men in the world, and was during his presidency that the U.S. became a superpower. He was the only president that served 3 terms. 12 years with any president is a long time, but that is not what changed the world. Under FDR, we saw the creation of the Social Security Act, the FDIC, the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, Fair Labor and Standards Act, and other social programs. FDR was no stranger to war either. Under his term, the Pentagon was created, and he initiated the development of the atomic bomb, along with 2 other secret projects to end the war, which have never been disclosed. We also saw UFOs come to the forefront with the Roswell crash and the Battle of Los Angeles. Some even say these events paved the way for his predecessor's contact and participation in an alien treaty of some kind, in an exchange of technology. Camp Hero was already in the hands of the Army, but just so happens the Windmill House property itself was taken by the Army in 1945, just as FDR stepped down, the last piece of land that was acquired for the base. I am fascinated with the mystery of Battery 216, and the dangerous hole in the floor that exposes a massive underground room within the bluffs. Was this room built before the Army started building Camp Hero in World War II? Was this a naval structure built in secret, right under the feet of 2 very powerful men? There are a few clues in this location that further this theory. These 3 things are by no means proof. In some of my historical research, I found a mention of a seaplane dock being built at Montauk Point. Why is that significant? Because there's no facility there to land and go to. So if a seaplane were to land there, maybe it's just to get onto the beach. But the thought did cross my mind that they would enter somewhere on beach level and be able to reach the top of the bluffs. Why were seaplanes landing at Montauk Point? But unfortunately, I cannot find that citation. Number 2, this mention of a joint exercise in 1970 between the Navy SEALs, and this was on former Army property, now partially maintained by the Air Force, and the Navy was there doing this operation inside of Battery 216. This joint Navy exercise was only for a short period within 1 year. It does stand out as something very unusual. On top of that, it seems to corroborate one of the early writers discussing Montauk in the early 2000s, at the beginning of the internet, was Michelle Guerin. Her story, she actually goes inside of Battery 216. Part of her experience was very similar to what I experienced going through that tunnel. This date, 1970, the joint exercise, seems to corroborate what Michelle Guerin said, at least as far as the location and the year. 3. The cement-like hoodoos. Okay, so there's these structures called hoodoos. They're made of clay that is inside of the sand, and it erodes at a different rate, making these conical structures you see all over Montauk. One location seemed to have cement hoodoos of a different shape. They were more rounded, like igloo shape, and there's a whole row of them that aren't eroding as fast as the rest of the cliff. Not unlike normal hoodoos, but if you go up there and put your hands on them, they seem to be made of cement, and they're slightly off color. Danielle pointed these out to me and has been saying it since. She found one that was grayish in color with big conglomerate rocks stuck in it, like normal cement almost. And she was feeling it and said, look, this is cement, so put your hands on it. So I did, and it was very cement-like. This got me thinking, if I plot it if it happens to be in front of battery 216, if it happens to be there, then I would really start thinking that this could be an entryway to some kind of structure. In this color postcard, you could see how far the bluffs used to extend before they eroded back hundreds of feet. Sooner or later, battery 216 will be exposed.
Only time will tell. Windmill number 4.
We pass this windmill by almost every time we go to Camp Hero. This time we stopped to see what was inside. Let's just say the man that built this windmill was a clockmaker and obsessed with gears. Intricate, genius design with a little obsessive artistic madness. Oh yeah, I mean every board is original. The wood is like, what, 200 years old? This windmill is not connected to Camp Hero, but it is probably the only time I will ever see inside the top floor of a windmill. It is next to a very old cemetery as well. This is the gears to the ladder?
Now the curious thing...
Oh wow. That window looks like a great view too, I'm sure. You could actually go up that ladder too?
You can go up this ladder too.
Oh, nice. Never thought I'd climb to the top of a windmill. I believe so.
Maybe not.
Oh cool, there's the windmill itself. Oh, because you can't go in the fence, right?
Yeah.
She said we could look at the gears. Yeah, but that doesn't really... You're right.
It doesn't really go up too much higher anyway. It's not like there's a place you can sit up to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. This is cool enough.
This is unbelievable though.
Right? Look at all up there even. There's more gears. So other windmills don't have all these clockwork gears kind of.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Also, I'd like to thank all the subscribers who support our channel. It's been a while and I've missed you all. Brian and I are eternally grateful for your support. Thank you again. Namaste, and always keep it strange, especially when you're in Montauk.